Dr. Adolfo Murillo, and today I'll be presenting to you this wonderful spirit that we call tequila, a product of Mexico, proudly made, grown, produced in Mexico for the world and its enjoyment. Alquimia Tequila is the product that we'll be highlighting today, but first we'll talk a little bit about the history and how tequila came to be. Tequila really is a product of two cultures, two worlds, the old and the new. And it started in the central Mesoamerican plateau in Mexico, and by way of the noble agave plant. The noble agave plant sustained the indigenous peoples of Mexico for thousands and thousands of years in the way of providing nourishment, sometimes clothing, shelter, providing for many of their needs. With the arrival of the Europeans, they brought with them the distillation apparatus that we know today as the still, the alembic still, which actually has its roots in the Arabic countries. With the use of the still, they were able to ferment and distill the juices of the agave plant and produce what at that time was known as mezcal, which is a wider classification of agave spirits. This, over the next several hundred years, evolved into what we know today as tequila, which is made specifically from the blue agave plant, and it now enjoys denomination of origin status, much like cognac and champagne and some fine wines. And because of that, tequila is grown and produced only in the state of Jalisco and small parts of the surrounding states. In order for a spirit to be called tequila, it has to be, again, blue agave only. It has to be grown within that denomination of origin zone, and it has to be produced there. And if it is going to be 100% agave tequila, it has to be bottled there as well before it is sold to the public or exported to other countries. The agave plant takes 7 to 10 years to mature, and during this time, contrary to what many people think, it does require constant maintenance, constant care in taking care of the agave plant, trimming it, taking care of the soil around it, and keeping it free of pests and diseases, so that 7 to 10 years later the agave plant can be harvested to make tequila. The agave plant has only one life to give for tequila, this noble spirit. After it is harvested, a given field of agave needs to be completely turned over and replanted, and we start all over again. The agave leaves are cut off by men called jimadores, using a very sharp tool called a coa, and with the coa they shave off very meticulously all of the leaves around the agave plant, leaving a center core which ends up looking like a giant pineapple, and for that reason it's called a piña. And the piñas are then loaded onto trucks to be taken to the distillery, where they are placed into large ovens. The more traditional way of cooking the agave is in stone ovens. Some of the larger distilleries now also use stainless steel autoclaves, which are like a giant pressure cooker. They do cook the agave much, much faster. However, some of the small artisanal brands prefer the more traditional stone ovens. The philosophy there is that there's more control, there is more complete caramelization of the sugars, and also it gives us more control in ridding some of the substances that can lead to bitterness in the end product, the tequila. After it's cooked, the cooked agave is then shredded and milled to remove the juice from the fiber in the agave. This juice is then placed into large, usually stainless steel vats for fermentation. Some of these vats are as large as 30,000 liter capacity, and we usually add yeast to the mixture to promote the fermentation. The yeast is a microorganism that comes in and digests the sugar. And as a byproduct, there are actually three byproducts of the fermentation. The digestion of the sugar is by the yeast. One of them being heat, and if you place your hand on the fermentation vat, it'll actually feel very hot. And if you look down into the fermentation vat, you'll notice that it's swirling and churning like a washing machine, but there's actually nothing mechanical going on inside. That is simply the production of carbon dioxide, which is another of the byproducts. And the third byproduct from the digestion of the sugars is, fortunately for us, alcohol. And once the yeast completes their digestion of the sugars, then we call that the mosto. And when all of the activity slows down, we call it the dead mosto. And this mosto, or the must, is then transferred over to the pot stills. We like to use stainless steel pot stills for distillation. What happens there is that the pot still is slowly heated up to the desired temperature, which is the boiling point of alcohol. And the alcohol then is converted to steam, and it climbs up out of the still and goes through these large tubes, which are then wrapped in cooling coils. And the cooling coils then convert that steam back into liquid, which then drips down into a collecting tank. And that makes it a liquid again. And that is the first distillation of the tequila, and that yields what we call the ordinario. The ordinario is then placed into a second still for a second distillation. Most tequilas are required to have minimum 2 distillations, and most tequilas are distilled twice, although there are some companies that are distilling their tequilas 3 times or even up to 5 times. The tequila that results from the second distillation is now a full-blown tequila as we know it, although usually it is a bit higher proof than what we normally see in the marketplace, anywhere from 50 to 55% alcohol, sometimes even a little bit higher. But then prior to bottling, it is adjusted back down to, for the U.S. market, 40% or 80 proof, usually by the use of water that is added to dilute the alcohol back to the desired proof. At this point, we're going to invite a good friend of ours, a guest that will accompany us in a tasting of the line of our guest tequila today, Alquimia Tequila. We'll be right back. We're joined by my good friend Al Galvan, who is going to, he has very willingly volunteered to go through a tasting of Alquimia Tequila with us today. Are you ready, sir?
And I'm very happy to be here. Yes,
Thank you for joining us. As with all tastings of tequila, we normally like to start with the youngest to the oldest or the more aged expression of the tequilas. Alquimia Tequila has 4 expressions, the Blanco, Reposado, Añejo, and Extra Añejo. And so we're going to start with the Blanco Tequila. And we'd like to invite our friends that are watching us to join us in this virtual tasting as we go through this flight of tequila. So this will be a flight simulator of Alquimia Tequila, if you will. Although we will be having the real thing because we need to be able to talk about the elements in the tequila itself. So we'll start then with the Blanco Tequila. Love that sound.
Oh, nice.
Are you ready, sir?
I believe I am ready.
Now you'll notice that we're not using what has come to be known as the caballito, the long slender glass that traditionally has been used to take shots of tequila. The tequilas of today, we like to we like to portray as something that we do not shoot. We rather sip and enjoy, really to give you the best enjoyment of the spirit itself, because if you shoot it, you really don't have a chance to appreciate everything that is in the tequila itself. So,
What, if I might ask,
yes, sir.
what makes it so clear? I've seen others that are darker. This is very clear. Got
That's,
a beautiful, clear.
thank you. That's a good question. Tequila in its most natural form, like the Blanco tequila, is always clear like this. After the second distillation of tequila, it's always clear. What gives it the color that we see in some of the more aged products is the exposure to the oak barrels that where it's placed for the aging. So the Blanco tequila then is the truest form of pure tequila. This is, has not been influenced in any way by being in the oak barrels. And most Blanco tequilas are bottled soon after distillation, although the Tequila Regulatory Council does allow for Blanco tequilas to be placed in oak barrels for not more than 60 days. So it has to be less than 60 days, and it can still be called the Blanco. And some companies will do this. Alquimia Tequila prefers to bottle theirs without exposure in any way to the oak barrels. And when we enjoy a tequila, the first aspect we like to look at is the visuals, which we've already touched on. And it should be very nice and clear. There should not be any sediments, no turbidity, no cloudiness in the tequila itself. And as we hold it up to the light, it should reflect the light very, very nicely and even shimmer. It should be very shiny, if you will.
I noticed there's something sticking to the sides. Is that a good thing, or is that?
That's actually a good thing, and
Really?
that's the body of the tequila, or the legs. And as we tilt our glass and tilt it back down, we see a film that clings to the side of the glass. Then it collects and comes back down and runs back down into the tequila itself. That is made up of the essential oils that were actually in the agave itself and have carried through the fermentation and distillation and are existing right in the tequila here. And that's part of what helps to make a good tequila, makes it glide very gracefully over your palate and gives it that nice smooth velvety feel. And you're already on to the next step.
I'm
There,
noticing there's an
compadre.
aroma coming from here.
Absolutely.
What
And
causes that great aroma? Where does it come from?
now the aroma, it should be very enjoyable. It should not be overpowered by a very aggressive alcohol presence, so that you can actually enjoy what is in the tequila and what it was made from. And in this case, this has very, very intense elements of the freshly baked agave, and that comes through. It's got a lot of sweetness to it, and a very, very fresh aroma. And the olfactory aspect up here, your nose plays a big, big part in actually tasting a good tequila. A big part of the tasting experience actually does begin with your nose, and this is what we're enjoying here now.
My mouth is salivating. The aroma is smooth.
So with that, I think we're going to need to move on to the next step, which is the actual tasting of the tequila. So before then we go on to the tasting of the tequila, we have to say the magic words, compadre.
And what are those?
The magic words are Salud con Tequila Alquimia.
Salud. Oh, smooth. What makes it so smooth?
Again, a finely crafted tequila should be enjoyed this way. It should not be overly harsh, and it should allow you to let it flow completely over your palate, so that you can pick up all the nuances in the tequila itself, and let the flavor profile just really open up and let you truly appreciate what is within this flavor profile of the tequila.
So you're telling me that just shooting it is not the way to go?
Absolutely not. You know, when we work so hard to produce the best tequila that we can, it sometimes breaks my heart to see somebody take it and just shoot it down, and because they are not going to be able to appreciate all the hard work that we put into making this fine spirit. So we prefer to ask them to take their time with it, sip it slowly, enjoy it. Even the finish should linger, should not go away quickly. It should linger, and just relaxing after having your sip of tequila, you should be able to continue to enjoy the flavor profile in the tequila itself. And that is our Tequila Blanco. Now, whatever we don't bottle as a Blanco tequila then is placed into American white oak barrels from Kentucky with a medium char, and that is for aging of the tequilas. And so next up we'll be visiting the first step, the first expression of the aged alquimias, which will be the reposado. Are you ready to put down your Blanco tequila?
I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
I can smell the scent of the agave. Somehow, when you described it, I could tell. But what gives it that smooth taste? What am I tasting?
You're tasting, you actually said it yourself, you're tasting the agave. The agave, if you ever have an opportunity to go into a tequila distillery, what we are describing here in the aroma is precisely what pervades your senses completely when you walk into a distillery. You're immediately invaded by this intense aroma of the freshly baked agave. It's very, very sweet. It's in this case, when it comes through, it's very crisp and fresh. But when you have had the chance to know what the distillery smells like, especially, that brings you, and when you have a taste of a Blanco tequila, especially the Blanco tequila, it transports you way back to the time when you were in the distillery, because that aroma and the taste are very, very distinctive. No other spirit has a flavor profile like tequila. To me, when I appreciate that aroma, or sometimes when I eat some of the freshly baked agave, to me, the closest I can describe to its taste is a cross between creme brulee and bananas Foster. And creme brulee is one of my favorite desserts in the whole world, so you know that I really do enjoy that.
I can see why. This is excellent.
Salud once again, compadre.
Salud. Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. I'm almost there at the factory. I can smell it. I can taste it.
And that's what it should do. It should transport you, help you to relive that wonderful experience of being out in the agave fields and actually being in the distillery itself. The expression that most does that for you would be the Blanco tequila, because of its purity, because it is the closest to the natural agave as we can get. So we'll be back with the next expression, which will be the reposado.
And thank you, compadre.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Always good to have compadres willing to
To partake in such
participate.
ambrosia. Adolfo, before we move on, I just noticed something. It has a certain marking here. It says USDA organic. What exactly does that mean?
That actually is very, very significant, especially for Tequila Alquimia. Many people have the perception that agave grows in the wild, and at most maybe you plant it and then you come back 7 or 10 years later and harvest the agave. But unfortunately, the opposite is true. Agave, for the most part, agave is not grown in a natural way in Jalisco or anywhere in Mexico. the great majority of agave is grown under very, very chemical-intensive methods. And this goes also for just about any crop grown in Mexico and many other parts of the world. Each year, millions and millions of tons of toxic pesticides and chemical fertilizers and fungicides and weed killers or herbicides are poured onto the earth just for the sake of producing a marketable crop or product.
That doesn't sound very healthy.
Not at all, and really I think that it's something that many people need to be aware of, because the result of using so many chemicals, and much of the use of chemicals is actually unregulated, is devastating, first of all, to the soil, and it's just a matter of time before that soil becomes completely sterile and will no longer produce crops. And what happens then is that it just becomes semi-desert, and the topsoil will eventually be blown away by the winds or washed away by the rains, leaving nothing but rock and sand. Along the way, the health of the farm workers is a huge issue, because they apply these chemicals usually with no protection at all. And we wanted to do, we took on a commitment to make the land productive, and if we were able to do that, to then use that as a means to teach others how to also improve the quality of their soil and their way of life and their ability to take care of their families. I used my science background to develop the organic protocol that we use for Tequila Alquimia. And over the years, over these past 20 years, we've done a lot of teaching on the ranch and off-site to growers of many crops, not just agave, but many other crops, and actually now in about 6 other states, and to help them also to achieve the same results with their land. And we actually can't do a lot by ourselves, but what we do is, when we teach others how to use our organic protocols, we do so under the condition that they then will turn around and teach others how to do the same. And then they will teach others. And very soon, I have a feeling that if this continues and we gain more momentum, that we will soon begin to make a difference in the environment and in people's lives.
So you're actually able to measure the intensity of their commitment to the organic process?
We like to think so, and a lot of people, once they are open to changing over their ways of farming to our methods, all we have to do really to commit them is to show them the results on their crop, on their soil. Then once they see that, then they're sold for good, and they continue that. They've been very, very good about helping us to continue to educate growers and educate the public, because really this many times is an issue that is consumer driven. There are actually very, very few tequilas that are actually certified directly by the USDA. And this is a commitment that we took on, that we hope to continue to work towards. And we have really, it's based on the great support that we have had among our community, because that is what helps us to continue to do our work in Mexico in the fields, and educate growers and educate consumers about the devastating effects of toxic chemicals out there in the agricultural arena, and the health effects, the very, very negative health effects that this will cause on the consumer. Salud to all of you, and we hope that you enjoy Tequila Alquimia as much as we have enjoyed bringing it to you.
So smooth.
We would like to thank our hosts here at the kitchen in downtown Oxnard for the use of their wonderful facilities. This is a beautiful place, and they very, very graciously have allowed us to film right here on their location. I'd like to invite you all to come out to the kitchen.
Extremely hospitable.
Right here in downtown Oxnard.
Que se quede el infinito sin estrellas o que pierda el ancho mar su inmensidad.